talk about human rights, that is a fairly modern concept. Um, when we talk about rights, we're really talking about a set of relationships, social relationships that are enshrined or inscribed or embedded within a more formal legal system. Now, by that I mean a guide to behavior, to what is right and what is wrong, and it's an expression of authority, some authority. It could be the authority of the community, authority of a country, or it could be the authority uh, of a world community or a world federation. Now, no matter how specific you would make a law, it can never really um, anticipate all of the possibilities to human behavior, even with the change of time and place. What made sense at one time just becomes anachronistic and subject to varying interpretations. And I submit our own Constitution is a document that is exactly in that position between trying to interpret, tease out the actual meaning, or maybe the best interpretation of what that would be, the best application. So I think that we have the Ten Commandments, fairly brief document. Constitution is fairly brief, but when you get into enacting laws, it becomes such a complicated and frustrating process that very few people really understand the what the document entails and how it should be interpreted, because there are so many varying interests competing. I think if anything, the more the more general, the better. I mean, that would be my feeling, or maybe more categorical would be a way of looking at it. But I just don't know, because the technology that we have today is not the technology that we had 10 years ago. And it certainly won't be what we have 10 years hence.
Well, the world has changed considerably, that's true, but I don't think we need to reframe our rights. I think we understand perfectly well what our rights are. The issue is, how do we protect them in the digital age. So the problem right now with the NSA is not that we need a new set of rights to deal with something like the NSA. We know that what the NSA is doing is wrong, but they have this ability, this technological ability, to basically look through everything we do, everything we communicate, to keep track of how we're associating with other individuals. And it doesn't take a genius to understand that these are in conflict with the principles that were laid out, for example, in the U.S. Constitution. So I don't think we need a new way of understanding what our rights are. I think we just need to protect those rights because they're currently under threat.
There has been a change to the extent of awareness, whereby 65 years ago or 80 years ago, the issue of awareness of what was going on deleteriously in the field of human activism was not that much on the forefront. Now, there is awareness, but the problem is lack of action. That is the problem. They say, oh, you read in the newspaper that there is genocide in Rwanda, there's genocide here, it's terrible. But very little is being done about this. So from the human rights point of view, yes, people are more and more aware because it's being broadcast. When there was the Armenian genocide, this didn't really come about till a lot of people didn't even know about this. Whether it was suppressed by the media, by the newspapers, by the radio, I don't know. So, again, at the expense of being repetitious, what I want to say is, yes, there has been a positive change from the point of view of awareness. What is still lacking is some real proactive action.
So forth. But the basic idea of public higher education, that everybody was expected to go through this. You won't find this in the Bill of Rights. You won't find this in the Constitution. But you do find it in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Each person has a right to social security, employment, rest and leisure, education, and a standard of living adequate for his or her health. Education is one of those freedoms that we don't even question, that it's not even enumerated. In the same way we talk about the right to be married and to have a family. These are rights that maybe they're implicit in our Constitution, but because they're so fundamental, it's like air, oxygen. It's there, we accept it. I once knew a custodian when I worked at a community college. He told me higher education was everything above the basement. And I think he meant this in a cynical way. I mean, I'd rather use the term further education rather than higher, because further applies to wherever you are, and it doesn't denote a hierarchy. When you talk about higher education, you're really expressing a belief in a hierarchy, and with a hierarchy there's a value imprimatur also that goes with that higher is better. I think of the great chain of being in medieval history. The higher you are, literally, the closer you are to God. I think further education is a much more useful principle, because that would apply to everybody. So I think we have a mandate for further education, and certainly that includes higher education. But by just focusing on higher education, we're neglecting millions of people who could benefit from further education.
In the last years in Italy, we use researchers, journalists, and prosecutors use the term ecomafia. This term was coined by Legambiente, which is a non-governmental organization, ecologist organization, which issues every year a report on the activities of ecomafia. Which is ecomafia? Ecomafia refers to criminal organizations committing crimes against environment, crimes that cause damage to the environment. The main illegal activities are trafficking and illegal waste disposal, illegal housing and forest arson, and also building on a large scale without planning permission. But we can say that the most lucrative business is of this kind is the illegal waste disposal. We're talking about a global issue regarding various areas in the world. world. But we also can say that in the Western world, Italy is an important crossroads for the trafficking and illegal disposal of toxic and industrial waste. We know that from the northern industrialized European countries, many a large amount of quantity of illegal waste is shipped to Asia, Africa, and Eastern Europe. For example, in Eastern Europe, Romania seems to be one of the favorite country for waste traffickers. In Romania, there's the biggest landfill in Europe. Of course, we must say that mafia type organization didn't create this market. This market was there. I mean, the legal waste disposal market. Mafia had let's say, the know-how to enter and be successful in this kind of market. For example, researchers and scholars now talk about the social capital of mafia. The fact that mafia members can have important connections with politicians and with businessmen. And an advantage of the mafia is that the most important of these advantages is that mafia has control over territories, and this control make possible the fact that a part of the rural land is transformed into illegal dumps.
I love the way you phrase that, which it doesn't have a new responsibility to like help people know what's going on. But that's always been the responsibility of journalists, right? To help people understand what's actually going on. And we haven't seen that in the United States. I mean, the United States is special in a way because the media is much more constricted here, as you probably know, than it is in many, many other places around the world. And that's because it's basically controlled by corporations. And the media, if it wants to be quote unquote objective, it stakes out this space between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, and they say, as long as we occupy some space between those two, we're being objective. And that's not the solution to getting at the truth. You are just sort of triangulating between the two positions of power in the United States, and you're not talking about people who are out of the power system altogether, and you're not doing nearly anything to illuminate the truth. I mean, that's not a way to find the truth. And I think the media, journalists in the United States, to a large degree, have failed us, and they've been failing us for a long time.
Since late 80s, mafia, the mafia organization in Campania, which is called Camorra, which has a long history. We can say almost 2 centuries of history. Found out that the legal waste disposal was could be a big business for the clans, mainly in the provinces of Naples and Caserta. They use rural land and the countryside as a big landfill. The figures are staggering. We can say that 1 million tons of toxic waste were dumped, and 1,200 illegal dumps are now in Campania. in some part of in some part of this region, the level of dioxin is 10,000 times over the average rate. So journalists and scholars can use the term of ecocide or environmental disaster. Of course, this kind of activities has created some health problems to the populations. For example, we know that 60 and or 70% of the vegetables and fruit production comes from this area, and not only for the consumers of Campania, but also for the rest of Italy and maybe the rest of the world. To describe this situation, they invented, the journalists and researchers have invented some vibrant metaphors. For example, they talk about land on fire, of fires, because a part of this waste is dumped or buried, and another part is just set on fire. So in an area in Campania, we can see many fires, especially by night, set by the who we can call the foot soldiers of Camorra. They also use the term, another expression, that is triangle of death. There's a study of the medical review journal, the Lancet Oncology, a study of made in August 2004, that says that the region has experienced increase in death caused by cancer and other diseases. So we're talking about lung cancers, liver cancers, mainly caused by the level of dioxin in the atmosphere. We can say that in Campania the incidence is 2 times the one of the rest of the nation. I think that to fight against organized crime, they have to organize. Citizens, first of all, they have to become aware of the problem. Because one of the problems connected to mafia and the presence of mafia in these territories is that most part of the population tend to live as the mafia wasn't a problem, wasn't there. So I think that the first thing is that citizens must be aware of the problem and begin to raise awareness in other citizens and inform on these issues. For example, but not only environmental activists, but every citizen, because I think that the most important thing is to set a constant attention. They just can't afford to reduce their attention on this problem, because in the history of mafia we can say that we have long silences, and then the attention is raised up by some kind of emergency, like the one of the waste disposal in Campania, and then after the acme, after the protests and the response by the population and by the politicians, maybe they come back to the silence.
You know, people break into 2 different camps, and some people say, well, social media and the internet is going to be the great liberator. Other people say, no, that social media and the internet are going to enslave us. And I happen to think that they're both wrong, because I think that what's happening is that social media and the internet are the battlefield, right? That is the turf that both sides are fighting for. And so, you know, the internet can be something that's liberating for us, or it can be something that imprisons us. And that's why it's extremely critical that we understand what's going on, that we identify where it's being abused, and that we stand up and speak and prevent it from being abused. I think it's possible. I think there are certain kinds of obstacles that we need to deal with first. So I happen to believe that corporations are doing a lot of work, what I would call psychological operations or psyops against the American people or the population generally. And they actually do things like run sock puppets in social media sites. So, for example, there was a project by the U.S. Air Force where they were looking for people to develop what they call a persona management system. What is that? A persona management system is a system where, say, one person sitting at the Pentagon can control 100 accounts in social media. We know that Fox News does this too. They run many sock puppets on social media sites or in commenting on news stories. So the problem with social media is it can be gamed. And again, I feel like social media under those terms doesn't guarantee you democracy. It can be undermined. And it can give a false impression of what the will of the people is. So again, I think that social media is not the answer. It's not going to bring in democracy. I think it's a battleground. And if you want democracy or just basic democratic principles to flourish, then you have to make sure that no one's gaming social media against you. Well, I'm pessimistic about a lot of things, but I'm most pessimistic about universities, because I feel that universities more and more are not worried about teaching young people how to think critically about problems in our society. And they're thinking more and more about how do we please the donors, how do we get corporate money, what kinds of projects can we do that are going to bring in grant money and so forth. And you see this, for example, in the humanities, where the humanities are being choked out. Well, why? They're being choked out because the university doesn't know how to monetize them. The humanities have been successfully given a bad rap as being too radical or something. I don't know. But the problem is that, the humanities is where we engage in critical thinking. And it used to be that the humanities and the sciences would advance hand in hand. If you think about Greek civilization, or if you think about the Renaissance, that is a classic example, where you had people like Da Vinci. Well, is he a scientist, an engineer, a person of letters? And the answer is all of these things. And, say a couple hundred years ago, we took what used to be called natural philosophy, we split it in two. We said, okay, well, you're going to do science, you're going to do the critical thinking part, we'll put you in the humanities, we'll put you in different buildings. It's not been good, because now science is progressing and engineering are progressing very, very rapidly without the appropriate critical thinking. The humanities, by being walled off from that, are basically operating in ignorance. And so it's, in many cases, the stuff that does come out of the humanities is uninformed. And we have a problem. People talk about the crisis in the humanities, but people need to understand that the crisis in the humanities is a crisis for all of us. Because if we're not thinking critically about what we're doing and what we're up to, and about what these technologies mean and what they mean for our place in the world, we are doomed.
No. If you lose hope, you literally lose life. One of my favorite sayings is, where there is hope, there's life. If there was no hope, while we were trying to run away from the Nazis, while we were trying to save ourselves and be saved, I don't think it would help us in the process. When we were in that rat-infested cellar, and the people that were hiding us, they had a shortwave radio. And when we heard that the Allies landed on the beaches of Normandy, it was cause for celebration. And collectively we said, there's really hope. So you cannot lose hope. You really can't. You have to work at it to a certain extent. But you really, and I personally, and you know, we as a family, my mother, my aunt, we didn't lose hope. There were times where, you know, we questioned whether we were going to make it. But no, we never lost hope.